Hello and welcome to another edition of Jurisprudential Tuesday, a program brought to you by the Faculty of Law, University of Udoh. This program aims at educating, enlightening, informing, and addressing global issues from a legal perspective. My name is Edeke, and I'll be your host for today. Joining us in today's edition of Jurisprudential Tuesday is Barrister Deborah George. Barrister Deborah George is a dedicated legal practitioner with experience in corporate practice, litigation, and dispute resolution. As an associate counsel at Justice Fourth Chambers, Udoh, she specializes in legal research, drafting, and advocacy, ensuring strategic and effective representation for clients. Thank you very much, Ma, for joining us on the show today.
You're welcome.
Yes, so our topic for today is sexual harassment, a thorn in our contemporary society and its remedy. Please, can you tell us how a person can be said to be sexually harassed?
A person can be said to be sexually harassed when he or she is subjected to unlawful sexual demands. This usually happens where there is request for sexual favors, verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature, that creates an intimidating atmosphere or hostile environment such that the victim will not be effectively able to discharge his or her responsibility without fear. So this happens usually in workplace, schools, it happens in public places as well.
Okay, so is there a difference between the declaration of sexual harassment or advancement and the harassment itself?
Yes, there is a difference between those two. Usually for declaration of interest, yes, like someone asking another person out. That usually happens respectfully and with consideration of the other person's feelings, particularly. While sexual harassment is usually done in a way that is persistent and coercive. Usually you want this person to succumb to your advances. That is the distinction between these two.
Thank you very much for that answer. So in today's society that is filled with so much enlightenment, the social media, so much education, some people are still scared or they still struggle to speak up when they are sexually harassed. And it is tried that concealing an act is synonymous with agreement. In lieu of this, can we say that people or victims of sexual harassment who fail to speak up, that they subtly agree to this act?
No, I would not say that. Silence in this case does not mean acceptance. Usually, the victims of sexual harassment do not always speak out because of fear from the society and stigma of the society. They always want to bottle it up within themselves so that people will not point fingers at them, and that cannot actually amount to acceptance. It's just because of the societal purview of these things.
Thank you, Ma. So generally in our society, especially in Nigeria, a lot of women are encouraged to speak up, to say their mind. If you're harassed, you should talk to somebody, go to court, or do something about it. And statistics have it that 81% of women globally are sexually harassed. In light of this, do you think that there are no cases of harassment of the male gender? Because most times it's the female gender that are encouraged to speak up. And then do you also know of known cases of male sexual harassment, and how did it go?
Okay, sexual harassment is actually not exclusive to females. Males are always harassed as well, and although the society has so furnished it in a way that only a woman has to be heard, growing up you hear people saying you are a man, just accept it. Yes. So in today's society, because of the male child growing up with such ideology, they tend to bottle up some kind of experiences they've had. But personally, I know I've had conversations with friends who were actually sexually harassed and abused, as a matter of fact. So it's not only exclusively to the females. Males are also harassed. Yes.
So In a situation, I mean, there are lots of cases, most people don't come out to talk about it, where the victims of this sexual harassment are subdued by the perpetrator. Perhaps they are people of influence, power, wealth. In that situation, what can the victim do? What should the victim do?
Okay, just like rape, sexual harassment is quite difficult to prove. So one thing I would advise victims to do is that when you are faced with such situation, gather as much evidence as possible. Otherwise, it will be a situation of your word against theirs. So it is very important that you gather as much evidence on this matter as possible. And also, it's also important to report to trusted organizations or friends so that you could have legal or emotional and psychological support. Yeah, so basically, yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. So, what are those type of acts that are normalized in our immediate society, but they constitute sexual harassment? I mean, people are told to speak up if they are sexually harassed, but some persons do not even know, what sexual harassment is, what are the forms of sexual harassment, or even if they know, these acts have been normalized, so they don't think it's anything wrong. We see it in our parks today, on the street, like in plaza, you see people touching women inappropriately. So in that situation, what are those type of acts that constitute sexual harassment?
Okay, some acts that constitute sexual harassment are touching people unsolicitedly. We have acts such as groping. I have such acts such as speaking to someone in a sexual way, and yes, constitutes sexual harassment. And this person actually did not solicit for this. The key word is unsolicited, because if there was actually consent, then that will move past the stage of sexual harassment. So once acts such as sexual jokes are passed on the other person when I do not ask for it, then that would constitute sexual harassment.
Sorry to take you back. So does that mean that those people at plaza that touch women and try to make them come to purchase something or another, is that sexual harassment?
Where are they touching you? Your hand, your
shoulder? Okay.
Your shoulder. So those are the things that will come into play.
So like what?
You could be in a crowded place, you could be in a crowded place and someone brush past you. Will that amount to sexual harassment?
Definitely not. Okay, so the key thing is, where is that person?
Where is that person touching you?
Okay, thank you so much, Ma, for that answer. Okay, so apart from law courts, are there other agencies, authorities, or non-governmental organizations that victims of sexual harassment can run to? And please, can you mention a few of them?
Okay, yeah, actually some organizations, some institutions that a victim can actually run to, yes. And we have a whole number of NGOs out there that advocate against sexual harassment and sexual abuse. And I know I've heard of Stand to End Rape. Yes, I've heard of Women at Risk International Foundation, and we have the International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA, or FIDA rather, and we have the National Human Rights Commission. Some of those are places you can actually go to as side courts. These people will follow up on this matter and most likely will lead to being the perpetrator being sued and definitely taken to court.
All right, thank you so much, Ma, for that response. So most times or all the time in cases of sexual harassment, the burden of proof is always on the victim. So can you say that an oral allegation of sexual harassment, I mean, how plausible is it? And how can a person prove that he or she has been a victim of sexual harassment?
Okay, while oral allegations are plausible, corroboration is actually very important, because basing such on oral allegation will not be sufficient, to say the least, because many persons can just wake up one day and say, I was sexually harassed. We've seen it play out timelessly, especially with men of influence. You see, a woman would say, oh, he raped me, but in the actual sense, probably she picked up, I think I've heard of a case where a lady picked up a condom used by a popular footballer, so used it and then said she was sexually harassed. Yes, so if we base on oral allegations only, we will actually defeat the burden of proof in criminal matters, which says that he who alleges must prove. So if you are alleging sexual harassment, you should be able to prove and provide evidence to the court or to anyone who cares to listen that, in fact, I have this evidence to show that such a person harassed me.
Thank you, Ma. So what can you say are the consequences of sexual harassment on the perpetrator? Because most people think or feel they can sexually harass another person and go scot-free. So what are those consequences if they are reported?
For a perpetrator, one of the consequences is that once you are convicted, you will stand to lose a whole lot, including probably punishment as per sentencing. You could pay fines, you could lose your employment, because no employer would want to keep you in a salaried employment.
Definitely.
You know? So those are some of the things they will lose. They could be stigmatized in a sane crime. They could be stigmatized, you know. People are pointing fingers, that person actually did this and he was punished. So those are the things that a perpetrator would usually face. And for a victim, one of the consequences of sexual harassment on a victim is that he or she will go through psychological trauma, depression, and yes, it could actually result in lack of confidence. You know, yes. I've actually been this bold person and I become sexually harassed, I've been sexually abused. I would definitely lose my self-esteem at some point, and I'll be living in fear, because I'll feel that if I'm to go to Mr. A as a lady, ask him for a particular thing, Mr. A would always want me to give this to get that. So those are some of the consequences.
Thank you, Ma, for that response. So do you think that sexual harassment can be eradicated in the society? And if yes, what do you think are the remedies for sexual harassment?
Okay. For me, I honestly don't think for now that sexual harassment can be totally eradicated. Though it can be with the right level of legal literacy programs, you know, probably from secondary schools, if we can incorporate some informative programs into our curriculum to educate the students on the need to stay away from this act. You know, have building a grassroots or a foundation to the knowledge of people, you know, the bedrock of a society, they're the children, right? And, you know, impacting in them, the reason they should not engage in a particular act will actually make them to grow with that and see that this act is actually not proper. And I believe they would be able to stay away from it. But then, for people that are already adults, what can be done to eradicate it? If we are to eradicate it totally, I think strict sanctions should be upheld. And if someone is actually found guilty, the person should pay heavily for it. Yes. And like I said, if someone is found guilty, the person should pay heavily for it. So it now boils down on the victim who is alleging to present evidence so that we will actually know that this person is actually in default. You know, this person has wronged, and punishment will definitely follow.
Thank you so much, Ma. And I am sure that every one of our viewers, you have learned a thing or two from today's edition of Jurisprudential Tuesday. Please do not forget to report cases of sexual harassment to the court. I mean, get a lawyer. Very important, get a lawyer. And learn to speak up, both the female gender and the male gender. Thank you so much, Ma, once again for your time and for joining us in the show today. I hope you learned a lot. Bye till some other time. I remain Victory Edeke. Thank you, my esteemed viewers, for your time and for your audience. I am certain that you have learned something from today's edition of Jurisprudential Tuesday. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and follow this channel. And remember, it was brought to you by the Faculty of Law, University of Uyo. I remain Victory Edeke. Thank you for your audience.